Hey, Star Trek fans! Welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are on Season 3, Episode 5, entitled Second Skin. This episode first aired October 24th, 1994. I actually thought it was a mistake when I just checked my notes because we had Second Sight and now we have Second Skin. I was worried I opened the wrong notes, but here we are.
They're running out of names.
They lost creativity. We're only in Season 3 and they're already out of names. Well, before we start on this one, anything to say about the previous episode called Equilibrium?
No, it was perfect.
It was about Dax and Trills, right? So I'm sure it was perfect.
Yeah, that was a great Trill episode.
Yeah, it was good. Well, before we start on this one, I saw the Hulu thumbnail of Kira as a Cardassian before I started it, and I was not amused. I thought, how cruel to make Kira go undercover as a Cardassian. That's what I thought was going to happen in this episode. And I thought, wow, that's just mean.
Yep.
It's not what happened, but...
No. This is another episode of I did not remember it, which made it more interesting to watch because, well, just because I didn't know the hook.
You didn't know how it would end?
Correct.
Well, in the cold open, Dax is in the Replomat waiting for Kira. She's telling Quark that they're supposed to go anti-grav sailing in a holosuite, but Kira is late because she doesn't like holosuites. Kira arrives at that moment and says, anything worth doing in a holosuite can be done better in the real world. Quark does not agree, of course, and she has the usual unpleasant banter with him. When Quark leaves, he kind of gently touches Dax's arm, and it was this weirdly sweet, non-creepy moment. And I can't explain it. It was very out of character.
Very un-Ferengi.
Very un-Quark, the whole thing. It really caught my attention.
Yeah.
Well, Kira apologizes for being late, but Dax is just happy that she's not canceling.
Kira does a very unconvincing attempt at faking enthusiasm.
Oh, yeah. She's like, let's go. I mean, you knew that wasn't going to happen because they made this whole thing about, you knew they weren't going in the holosuite.
Well, there is that.
When they get up to head to the holosuite, Kira gets a call from the Bajoran Central Archives, and it's a woman in a drab brown outfit saying she's doing a study on the Elimspur Detention Center, and she wanted to interview Kira. Kira says she'd be happy to help, but she was never at Elimspur. The woman says that Cardassian records clearly indicate that Kira Nerys was held at Elimspur for 7 days. Kira feels like she'd probably remember something like that, but the woman shows her an image of her at the camp, and some dramatic music plays. Then we pan to the second level of the promenade, and a mystery woman with pointy ears and a harsh part down the middle of her hair that seems to go all the way down her forehead is looking ominously down on the scene. And we cue the theme song.
Yeah, Dax looks at the picture on the screen and says, "It's you!"
Very Wallace and Gromit.
There's a good chance Kira arranged this whole thing just so that she could avoid going in the holosuite.
Yeah, maybe. Season 1, we had a lot of bad guys hiding behind the grates, but pretty much since then, we've changed to them always standing up on the second level of the promenade looking down.
I think some of that comes from the fact they've realized that security is so bad you don't actually need to hide anymore.
You can just stand right out in the open.
Yeah.
Like, remember when the Teletubbies were on the second level? Nobody even noticed.
A small observation here. Did you notice Kira's hair in this scene?
Yeah, it's very good. She looks good in short hair.
My notes actually say fierce.
Wow. Now we go to security, and Odo tells Kira that either her memory or the prison records are wrong. She laughs that off because she remembers exactly where she was that week. She was in the Dakhur Hills with her resistance group. They had no power, little food, and they spent most of the time in caves hiding from Cardassian sensor sweeps. It was very memorable.
I feel DS9 missed an opportunity to do a flashback here and show some more caves.
Well, they could have. Well, she says these records are fake, but who faked them and why? Odo says the records indicate she shared a cell with 3 other inmates, and then he proposes that they contact them for some info. So the first dude they call remembers her being there, so this isn't going very well right out of the gate.
Yeah.
He says he almost didn't recognize her because her hair was longer then. The music starts to swell, so we know that this is starting to worry Kira now, or worry somebody. The guy says he thought when the Cardassians dragged her out of the cell, she was as good as dead.
So they have an eyewitness to her being there.
I don't trust that guy. He looked suspicious to me as soon as he got on the phone. It was his hair, I think.
Well, at least he didn't have a moustache. That's usually a giveaway.
Yeah, it's like Boone in Tribunal. Well, so Kira's heading to Bajor for a few days to look into the story. Sisko tells her the guy she talked to could have just been lying. Kira agrees, but also the records and the only surviving witness say she was at Elimspur, so she needs to pursue the truth.
Yeah.
So away she goes to the Bajoran transport, carrying her big cloth pack, Future suitcases are not an improvement, I have to say.
Basically, everybody just has holdalls.
It's just these giant bags. Yeah, like just dump everything in the bag. It goes all the way back to Q-less.
Oh, where she just had like the rucksack.
Yeah, remember Vosh? She just had that giant rucksack. Yeah. Maybe it's like an enchanted bag.
Yeah, Mary Poppins had that bag that kept lots of things in it.
Yes, maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's a Mary Poppins bag. Well, the woman in blue with the weird ears and hair follows Kira onto the transport, so she's up to no good.
Oh yeah, you know there's trouble there.
Absolutely. Well, Bashir finds Garak in the Replimat, and Garak's shop is closed because people don't seem interested in buying new clothes while living under the threat of Dominion attack. Quark complained of similar problems a few episodes ago. I guess the current hostile environment is killing business at the strip mall. They discuss Bashir's recent travels, and Garak says he misses travel. He says space is dangerous. Bashir asks if the Cardassian government would have him killed if he left the station, and Garak says Bashir has a vivid imagination. This is obviously a clue that Garak is going to take a trip. It was kind of funny.
Yeah, and I quote, "Space is dangerous, Doctor. You never know what might happen."
Gosh, it's like a pandemic. Stuck in your house.
This is Garak directly hinting that this is a little bit more than an exile.
Yeah.
He's effectively under house arrest at the station.
Yeah, I think we learn a little more about that in this episode, that he really has to stay here for some reason.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make a ton of sense that he's there. It makes sense that he's been exiled from Cardassia.
Yeah.
But it is like he is being punished by having to be on a Bajoran station under the eye of Bajorans all the time.
Right.
I suppose that is its own kind of punishment. It's a peculiar punishment, but it seems to work.
Right.
But we haven't seen him go many places, although he's not around that much. He's not in every episode, so I don't know what he's doing.
He's busy tailoring, hemming dresses.
Yeah, right. But with the tailor shop closed, he's just having coffee.
Yes.
Now we go to Ops, and Bajoran Central Archives is calling. Apparently, Kira never arrived to meet with the woman in brown. And then more dramatic music plays as Sisko and Dax look at each other with concern.
Kira is missing.
In my notes, it says, "Find that pixie." Even I knew that she was up to something.
Right.
Well, then we go to a very dark room where we see that pixie, the creepy hair woman, and a male voice in silhouette says, "Wake her." And the pixie administers a hypospray on the dark form in front of her, and we hear Kira's voice ask, "Where am I?" The pixie says, "It's all right, you're safe." But when Kira sits up and sees herself in a mirror, she is somehow now a Cardassian. And the worst tragedy is her hair. Her perfect, cool hair is now the same hairstyle of every Cardassian except Makbar.
Yeah.
It's very disturbing.
I'm just going to have to say it. She does make a very pretty looking Cardassian.
Well, she doesn't think so. She grabs her face and she asks, "What have you done to me?" The shadowy figure in the background steps forward, and it's another Cardassian, and he says, "We've brought you back home to Cardassia." Uh-oh.
This was so soapy. They play up the dramatic music and do that really close zoom in on Kira's Cardassian face.
Yes.
I can't help but look at that and think how long she must have spent in makeup. It looks fantastic, though.
Yeah. She's in it for pretty much the whole episode, so it was worth it.
Even that extreme close-up, it really looks good.
It's very seamless.
Yeah.
The only thing I kind of noticed was there was one point when she was sort of squishing up her face in anxiety. And I did notice, like, oh, she's probably not supposed to do that. And you see the other characters with those heavy masks on or that heavy makeup, they don't do a lot of movement with their face. But she obviously doesn't have to wear this very often. It's just a one-time thing. And then, I noticed her face kind of cracked. I mean, the Cardassians are just endlessly terrorizing the crew on this station. Is it because they're the closest thing to Cardassia, or why are they just constantly picking people off of Deep Space Nine?
Well, I think it's because the Cardassians really haven't given up on their control of Bajor. They still see it as theirs.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen it multiple times. There is a whole faction, mostly Gul Dukat's side, which think they should never have left and feel that they were forced to leave by, and these are my words, a cowardly civil administration.
Right. The Dukatians.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Well, Kira is clawing at her face, and she backs away from the other two. They claim to be here to help her, but Kira says, "Whatever you think this is going to get you, it won't work." And they've also got her in this very awful brown outfit. I mean, between the hair and the outfit, this is not a good look for Kira.
Yeah.
Well, the dude keeps insisting that she's one of them and that there was really no way to prepare her for what she's going through. He says he questions the wisdom of their infiltration methods. By altering the memories of our long-term operatives, we ensure they'll never be discovered, but it makes reintegration difficult. He says they've given her some medication to help with the memory loss, but it takes time to work.
This guy is pretty slick.
He's very good.
His use of language, like when he agrees with Kira, saying, yes, all these things you're saying are expected. It was like all part of the plan. It was really very good.
No, he's well trained.
Yeah.
He tells her she's an undercover operative of the Obisidian Order named Ileana Gamor. Kira is like, sure I am. He tells a story about how she volunteered for this mission 10 years ago, and they kidnapped a Bajoran terrorist and gave Ileana her memories and appearance and placed her back on Bajor. He says she'll remember eventually. Kira's still not buying it, of course.
Oh, no.
He says she's in her home now, where she was born. He gives her one of those test tube-like memory sticks that we've seen a few times, and says, here's a message you recorded before you left for Bajor. It should help explain things. Then he heads out of the room. Now, this actor here is Gregory Sierra.
Oh, yeah.
From so many shows in the 70s through the 90s. He was in Sanford & Son, Hill Street Blues, Soap, Barney Miller, Miami Vice, MacGyver, and of course, many episodes of Murder, She Wrote, because who wasn't in Murder, She Wrote in the 90s? So, yeah, he's a very familiar face.
Even under all that makeup, he was very recognizable.
Absolutely. I recognized him right away, as soon as he started talking. Back on the station, Dax and Odo have been trying to find Kira. When they scanned the area by Elimspur Prison, they found a residual electrostatic charge, which could indicate she was beamed away by a transporter.
Yeah.
Sisko wants to know every ship in the area at the time of this event, as well as all ground-based transporters in the area. But really, couldn't a transporter be anywhere on the planet? Why in the area? Does it make any difference?
Yeah, and how do you know it wasn't the Jem'Hadar? Because they can beam people away and they have no idea where they went or where the ship was, as we have seen before.
That's right. Well, Dax points out that the residual charges could also be from a phaser or disruptor set to kill. I know, Sisko says solemnly.
There always has to be someone who's the downer in these situations.
And it's usually Dax. She's always the quirky one.
Well, I would expect Odo to be the O-downer in that situation.
That's true. You would expect that. We haven't seen O-downer in a bit.
He's still on a high from meeting his people.
I guess so, although that didn't end well.
Yeah.
Now we go to Cardassia Prime, and we have reused the exact scene from Tribunal, where two Cardassians are standing on a rooftop while the "Look to the Children" propaganda message plays. It's the same dudes. I went back and looked. It's the same scene.
I did exactly the same thing. I went back and looked.
Well, I mean, for us, this was only a couple of episodes ago.
Yeah.
But in real time, it was about 4 or 5 months. So you probably wouldn't remember, but that was funny. It was exactly the same.
Well, there is an alternative explanation for this. Based on what we know about the Cardassians, including Garak's favorite book of all time, The Never-Ending Sacrifice, this actually could be a Cardassian thing. That every day, at exactly the same time, these two guys do the same thing. They walk up onto the roof, one is leading, he looks back at the other one, and they watch the daily broadcast of Think of the Children. So it's really a commentary on Cardassian rigidity and routine that is a fundamental pillar of their society.
Sure. They just reuse the footage. Nice try, though. Well, we find Kira standing in her room. She's supposedly not a prisoner, yet she doesn't seem able to leave.
Well, it is secured by a force field on the window.
Right. She hasn't watched the video yet when the guy from earlier enters. Here we find out his name is Entek, and he's brought a legate with him. This guy approaches Kira saying, "It really is you." But Entek reminds him she doesn't remember him yet. This actor is also very familiar, and it's Lawrence Pressman from nearly 200 IMDb credits.
Wow.
He was a regular on Doogie Howser, apparently, but I don't know. I never watched that show, so I don't know anything about it. But he was also in a number of other things.
I never watched it either.
Well, anyway, he is Legate Tekeni Gamor, Ileana's father. Kira says, "My father died on Bajor fighting Cardassians." "That's not true," he says. He's been waiting to be reunited with her for so long. He sends Entek away, and Kira kind of flops back down on the purple couch in the room. Legate Daddy, as I will call him from now on.
Legate Daddy.
Says she'll remember eventually, and until then, she should consider herself a guest in the house. Though, of course, she can't leave, so not much of a guest.
She's a guest with restricted options for leaving.
Right.
I find it oddly disturbing how the Cardassians generally behave. I think they've done a great job in the acting and in the writing of showing this strange duality.
Yeah.
When he comes in, he's full of bluster, and typically the Cardassian thing we've seen where he says he's doesn't appreciate being kept waiting in his own house. And when Kira says that her father was killed fighting on Bajor, he just snaps at her and says, that's not true. And then immediately the way he softens and says, I know you don't remember me, and shows this really tender, almost humane side. Mm-hmm. When it comes to a loved one, it's so out of place with the way they behave. They're sort of monsters in their outward life. But when it comes to family, they're being very caring.
Right. Yeah, it's very strange. It's almost hard to buy.
Yeah.
That you would care about your kids so much. And at first I thought it was maybe something about, well, because it's part of the service to Cardassia, that you have to raise your children to be in service of them or whatever.
Right.
But that doesn't seem to be the case, at least with this guy. But this guy might be unique, as we find out later.
That's true, yeah.
It's very hard to believe that this awful race could actually be good parents.
Yeah.
That they can be so sweet to their children.
Oh, yeah.
But not to anyone else. And also not have a sense of justice.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Because wouldn't you want that justice to apply to your children if you really care about them?
Right. But they don't. They just follow what the state tells them. It's just hard to relate to.
How do you reconcile both those two things?
Yeah, just hard to understand.
And I think my final comment on this scene is that closing really put me on edge. It felt really claustrophobic, even though it was like an open room. Because Kira's sitting on the couch with her knees pulled up and her arms around them. She seemed kind of trapped.
Well, yeah. I guess because she's sitting as if she were in a small prison cell.
Yeah.
And she's staying pretty confined to that space in that scene.
Right.
And I can see where, to you, that would be like she sort of lost control. And so that would disturb you. Whereas I get really upset when the spaces are small or you're tied down physically.
Yeah.
The emotional barriers don't bother me as much.
Agreed.
Back on the station, Bashir is closing up the infirmary for the night when Garak approaches. He invites Bashir for a late-night snack, saying he has very important news about Major Kira.
I guess it's completely ingrained into Garak that he just can't be direct.
No.
That he has to do this a roundabout way rather than just going straight to Bashir and saying, I have all this information on...
Honestly, it's so annoying.
Yeah.
I would be so irritated if I had somebody like Garak in my life where it's just like, oh my God, just can you tell me? Can you just get to the point? It would be so much easier than me having to dig it out of you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Once in a while, okay. Sometimes it's hard to say something and maybe you beat around the bush, but I would get very frustrated by that. Because you know me, I'd just say it.
It would be like having a friend who starts everything with, guess what?
Yeah. Well, back to Cardassia. Legate Dad comes in with a tray for Kira and finds her searching for surveillance devices. He tells her where they are, but says they're not on. Sure.
Notice he's out of uniform as well.
He is. He puts her tray down, saying since she's probably used to Bajoran food, he replicated some Hasperat for her, which I thought was really nice, like the opposite of when Keiko made that Cardassian kid Cardassian food after he'd been raised on Bajor. I don't know, it just seemed very sweet.
This goes back to my point earlier. He's being so caring towards her.
Yeah. They discuss how he wanted her to become an artist before joining the Order. He says Cardassia can use a few more artists. I think he might be a little different.
Yeah.
He belongs in the mirror universe. Remember, I kept saying that the Cardassians should be poets or artists or opera singers or something.
Yeah, he's a mirror universe Cardassian. Maybe that's the thing we don't know about the mirror universe. That we saw this Cardassian Klingon alliance. Only a small number of the Cardassians are actually military or run that side of Cardassia.
Maybe. Just Garak.
Yeah. And on the actual Cardassian side, the actual planet's full of artists and hippies and people who are interested in the higher things.
Right.
Art and beauty.
Oh, that would be really funny. The Cardassian hippies.
And surfing. The mirror Cardassians are really into surfing and skateboarding.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. What they do is they send the small few Cardassians who are actually militaristic and run the Empire and things. They actually get them off planet. So it's totally the opposite. This would be the mirror Cardassia.
When she declines breakfast, he says, "You're as stubborn as your mother. She could never do anything the easy way." And Kira says her mother was an icon painter from Dakur province who died of malnutrition at a refugee camp when Kira was 3, which is terrible. Legate Dad says her mother was an inquisitor at the Central University. Then he says he blames himself for all of this. He should have stopped her from going on this mission. But she was so determined. He says her mother never forgave him. And Kira says, oh, you're good. The food, the house, the stories, it's all very convincing.
Yes.
And it is all very convincing.
He does seem very genuine.
He does.
At this point, I was honestly not sure if he was telling the truth or was just a very skilled member of the Order.
Oh, agreed. Totally agree.
It was great.
I wasn't sure all the way till the end. It's really hard to believe anything the Cardassians do.
It's kind of funny because at this point, if anything, I was sort of hoping it was an act because to build him up like this and then lose his daughter again.
Yeah, it's cruel.
We know the Cardassians do feel emotional pain, even if they act like it's a weakness. But I can't help but empathize with this guy.
It's cruel, I know.
Yeah.
He felt bad for the kid's dad from the Cardassian episode.
Yeah, and he was awful.
He was, and you still felt bad. Back on the station, Garak is telling Odo and Sisko that he's learned Major Kira is being held by the Obsidian Order, and there's nothing they can do to get her back. But Sisko and Odo think Garak can help them retrieve her, even though Garak continues to say it's impossible. Sisko says, well, the three of us are going to Cardassia.
Garak really doesn't like being put on the spot, does he? He's
No.
very irritated by this whole thing.
Oh, he's really annoyed in this scene. He says, if I were allowed on Cardassia, do you really think I'd be living here? And then Sisko goes into his normal blackmail mode, saying, there are certain ministers in the Bajoran government who don't like Garak's presence on the station and want him removed. Odo says rescuing Kira would go a long way toward improving your standing with the Bajoran government. Garak wonders why he should care, and Sisko points out this seems to be the only safe place in the galaxy for him, which we just talked about.
Yeah.
And Garak says this is extortion. And Sisko says, yes it is, which makes Odo smile. I love that little scene.
Extortion is my business. Blofeld, which is a reference to a Bond movie.
So you've told me. Well, they've got false identities, and the Defiant will appear to be a Koberian freighter on long-range sensors. Garak looks quite irritated. He has no intention of sacrificing his life to save anyone else's. If there's trouble, everyone else is on their own. Sisko says, Mr. Garak, I believe that's the first honest thing you've ever said to me. How perceptive of you, Commander, Garak says. I love this scene. This is really good.
Oh, yeah. The interaction between Garak and Sisko is beautiful. I don't think we've ever seen this before up until this point.
No, I don't think so.
Both of them are honestly experts at their game.
Yes.
So when it's played at this level, the results are just great. It's almost like when Sisko interacts with Kai Wynn. Now Kai Wynn.
Yeah, it's very good.
So before we leave this scene, do you think Sisko is telling the truth about the Bajoran ministers?
I think he probably was.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of things that go on that Sisko is privy to, and he pulls them out of his pocket when he needs them.
Oh.
For example, when he was talking to Kira about Odo back in the episode The Search, I can't remember if it was part 1 or part 2, and he was saying that Starfleet wanted rid of Odo a long time ago, like for 2 years they wanted rid of Odo.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like he's keeping all that information to himself and he pulls them out like little nuggets when he needs them. So my guess is it's probably true. And why wouldn't it be true that Bajorans wouldn't want a Cardassian on that station? Why not?
Yeah. Well, especially one which effectively serves as a conduit to Cardassian Central Command.
Which they maybe didn't know at first, but they certainly know now.
And I don't think Sisko is under any illusions that Garak is a conduit. I mean, he clearly knows.
Yeah. Well, again, back in the Cardassians episode, Central Command knew about the kid, the orphan, at the same time that Sisko heard about it.
Right. Although I think this is really an empty threat because we know the Cardassians are a little bit paranoid. I would think Sisko would understand the value of having that conduit back to the Central Command so that maybe the Cardassians wouldn't go too far.
I don't think it's an empty threat. I think he would get him off of the station if he felt like he needed to. If he saw no value in Garak, I think he would.
Right, and that's my point. He sees Garak as valuable.
Yeah.
That maybe having Garak passing information back to Cardassian Central Command can in some ways placate the side that says, oh, the Federation are about to invade, they're going to take over, they're going to put a base on Bajor, they're going to start a war.
Right.
And Garak serves as a conduit saying, no, you're being crazy. Because I could see the Cardassians having that kind of thinking, that they're about to be attacked.
Right. Look, leadership is a lot about pulling puppet strings of things and people around you.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can't just talk somebody into something, and it requires some form of manipulation to get to the right thing. Obviously, you can do that with negative intentions, but I'm going to just assume that the intentions are positive. And I think that we haven't necessarily seen that Sisko is good at that. But to me, this is an example of it. It's a little bit harsher than I would do it because you're playing a card that you can only play once or twice.
Right.
So when you lay your cards too much out on the table like that, you can't really go back to it. It's more of a sledgehammer way of dealing with the puppet strings, whereas I would rather find quieter ways to deal with the puppet strings behind the scenes and accomplish what I need to accomplish. Like, he probably could have utilized Bashir to get this information or to get farther along rather than going directly to it and then threatening him when he didn't get what he wanted. But Sisko has a track record that this is how he operates. I don't like what you say to me, I'm going to blow up the world. It's like he just did that in the previous episode on Trill.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't like what you are saying, and so I don't care if you're part of the Federation. I'm going to destroy your entire society because you're going to kill Dax. So, I don't know. He's a little bit of an overreactor, maybe. I'm not sure.
Kind of love it.
Yeah, you would love it because I think this is more your type of leadership, honestly, than I think it is mine.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Picard is my type of leadership either, but Sisko, I think, is a little bit more up your alley.
Great scene.
Very entertaining.
I think it was helped by having two good actors really deliver the essence of the characters.
Definitely. Well, we go back to the Cardassian torture chamber.
Her bedroom?
Yeah. Legate Dad and Entek are chatting about how Ileana still doesn't remember anything. Entek says it's been 2 days and her memory should have started resurfacing by now. He sends Legate Dad away because he needs to question her.
This actor does such a crazy good job at being a spy. The way he smiles too much, do you notice that? And when he's talking to Legate and basically trying to get him out of the way and send him off, the little touch of, did you notice how his eyes sort of move too much?
No, I did not.
His eyes are sort of darting around.
Yeah.
And the way he smiles, the portrayal of this character, just blew me away.
Well, these good actors that they bring in to play these parts seem to know other ways to emote and get points across without being able to, utilize their faces normally.
Right.
Yeah, they always seem to be able to find some way to get the emotion across.
Yeah, brilliant.
Well, Entek starts asking Kira questions about her job on the station and about how many Starfleet personnel are on DS9. She claims it's a Starfleet station and she wasn't even allowed into ops, which, come on, Kira, even Gul Dukat knows that isn't true. Anyone who calls the station has seen her in ops. That was a terrible lie.
Yeah, Entek could just call up Dukat and say, hey, have you ever seen Kira in ops?
Right. She doesn't give him any useful info, and eventually he gets annoyed. He gets a little threatening, but then he stops and he calls someone saying, send me exhibit S1983I immediately. He says the Obsidian Order saves everything that comes into their possession, even cryogenic chambers containing biological subjects. And then a body is beamed into the room, and it appears to be a younger Kira, supposedly from when they kidnapped her 10 years before.
With very long hair.
Kira is a little shook, but she says, it's a fake, it's a hologram. And then he asks her about a time when she accidentally killed an animal. I don't know, this is like a long story, but whatever. And she asks how he knows that story, and he says, I know because it's a story we placed in your memory. It never happened. He tells her to ask herself if there's anything he's described that's beyond the capabilities of the Obsidian Order. And why would they be playing this game if it wasn't true? If they were just trying to extract info, they would have just done it. But he says he cares about her and doesn't want to harm her. She was his best student. He tells her again to watch the recording and think about what he said because the Order won't wait much longer.
Oh, few things in this scene. Those close-ups, this seriously is showing just how incredibly good the makeup is.
Oh, yeah.
Especially his face when they're doing a lot of the shots of him where he's being a talking head. That is outstanding. I mean, seriously.
It's funny because most of the makeup, like if you go back in TNG and look at the aliens there, many of them look like they're wearing makeup or masks or something. There's something about the Cardassian makeup that is so seamless, it looks completely real every time.
Yeah, the two of them look fantastic.
They've obviously gotten really good at it by this point.
Right.
But yeah, it's really good, even on Kira for her one episode as a Cardassian. At least I hope it's only one episode.
The other thing is, this is where I started thinking, wait a minute, something's up.
Yeah.
If he wants operational information about Deep Space Nine, couldn't they get all of that from Garak?
Yeah. You do start to realize the info she has seems so pointless.
Yeah.
It would almost make more sense if they were questioning her about Bajor rather than the station, which anybody can go to. Yeah, I agree. At this point, too, I was just like, I don't understand what they're trying to get out of her.
Yeah.
Well, Kira is messing around with the controls and manages to get the window open in her room when Legate Dad enters. He says she can go, but she won't get far before the Obsidian Order will stop her. She asks him for help, saying she'll never cooperate with the Order, so she won't survive here. He says he'll never allow the Order to harm her no matter what she decides. He says just watch the recording before you decide what to do. So another person trying to get her to watch the recording.
And he does, again, seem very genuinely concerned.
He definitely does, yeah.
So to quote Kira from earlier, he's either really very good or he does actually care about Eliana.
Yep. Well, he leaves and she finally gives in and watches the recording. I'm with her. I don't think I would have ever watched it.
Really?
I don't think so.
Huh.
Because I would know. They're just trying to fool me into something. What's the point?
I probably would have watched it because I really like Total Recall.
Well, okay.
Going through my head at this point was Arnie saying, "Get your ass to Mars."
Well, the recording appears to be her with longer hair, as the Cardassian, obviously. And she's telling the camera that she's going in for surgery tomorrow. Even though she'll miss Cardassia, she knows what she's doing is right, because the terrorism on Bajor must be stopped. Oh, God, I bet that really irritated Kira.
Oh, yeah.
And then did you notice in this scene that it jumped to a close-up of her?
Yeah.
As if there was someone actually producing this video and changing the camera angles?
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah, that was a little funny. She says she hopes her parents will understand and be proud of her one day.
Yeah, the recording seemed a little shocking to her.
Well, it does appear to be her as a Cardassian, which is not her, so it looked and sounded like her.
I wonder if they modified her voice box as well, so she'd sound however Cardassians speak.
I don't know. Good question. Now we're on the Defiant, and Cisco is walking around in some undercover civilian clothes. Odo comes in with Garak, saying he found him snooping around the ship. And Cisco says to confine him to his tiny quarters with a guard at the door.
Didn't anybody realize Garak's a spy, and a spy's gotta do what a spy's gotta do?
Spy's gonna spy.
Exactly.
Well, then some Cardassian ships approach, and Cisco asks if the communications holofilter is ready, and Dax says yes. It's like a kitty filter on Zoom, I imagine.
Yeah.
And we see that the Gull does not see Cisco. He's seeing a Koberian dude with a fake Zoom background as well.
Lucky they didn't have it set to cat.
The Gull asks where they're going, and Cisco says they're headed to Cardassia Prime carrying a shipment of Koberian Tauranium. The Gull threatens to board them, and Garak steps in, telling them to turn off the Zoom filter. Garak tells him to turn his ship around because this is an Alpha Red priority mission. And he gives a clearance code. And then he tells him to erase all records of the encounter. The Gull verifies the code and apologizes, and Garak hangs up, which was very interesting.
Oh, yeah. The fact that Garak had that code was the first part.
Yes.
But the other thing is, Cardassians are just so good at being bullied by other Cardassians who have more bluff and bluster.
Yes, whoever shouts the loudest seems to win.
It really is.
Yeah, it's very Gul Dukat. Cisco says he's impressed, and Garak claims it's just something he overheard while hemming someone's trousers.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah, there's a lot of Alpha Red priority messages or whatever he said when he's hemming pants.
It does make me wonder how much of this stuff Garak is being given and how much he's actually just stealing from other places. I would expect Garak is stealing most of these things. I think he genuinely is very much an exile. And he's obtaining this through secondary sources.
Yeah, he could be stealing it, or he could still have access to stuff. Because it would potentially still help the Cardassian Empire in certain situations if Garak were able to, I don't know, make moves like this.
So maybe...
They didn't expect him to help the Bajorans, but in general, it could possibly help him in other situations.
Oh, that's a good point. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Even though he's exiled.
Right.
Well, he suggests here that they get out of this area as soon as possible, which seems like good advice.
Yes.
Back to the Cardassian torture chamber, and Entek is asking what the names of the Starfleet ships deployed along the DMZ are. Kira is starting to struggle. She says she doesn't know. Entek doesn't believe her and keeps pushing her. Then Legate Dad comes in and stops the questioning.
He gets quite angry at it, yeah.
They have an argument about it behind Kira, and Entek says the next time they chat, it will be at the facilities of the Obsidian Order.
Well, if that doesn't sound ominous, I don't know what does.
Right. Legate Dad asks how she is, and Kira says nothing, but she goes to the mirror to look at herself. Don't fall for it, Kira. It's a trap. She puts her hands up on the mirror and shouts, no, and then she smashes the mirror and falls to the floor crying.
She's starting to crack.
Legate Dad says it'll be all right. He says we have to get you away from Cardassia. Entek will never rest until he's broken you. She's surprised that he would do that for her, but he says, you're my daughter. There's nothing I wouldn't do for you. I still here was like, who do I trust? Do I trust this guy or the other guy?
Yeah. I admit I was thinking, what is the plan here?
Kira is staring at the sculpture that she supposedly made as Ileana when Legate Dad comes in and gives her a piece of jewelry, saying it was her mother's. Kira doesn't want it, but he insists. Another Cardassian comes in. Legate Dad says it's Ari, a friend. He's going to help get Kira off Cardassia. Ari says the Obsidian Order and Central Command have been given too much power over our lives. We're going to change that. She's surprised to find out Legate Dad is a dissident.
She's quite shocked, in fact.
She is. And then he says goodbye to her. But Kira realizes there's something suspicious going on. Well, something more suspicious than what's already going on.
Something even more suspicious. Yeah, suddenly it's coming into focus for her.
Yes. Don't you see that the fact that you're a dissident and willing to help me, that isn't a coincidence? She wonders, why would Entek go to the trouble of changing me into a Cardassian and sending me to you? It's not me they're after, it's you, she finally realizes.
Yep.
He says impossible. They couldn't have evidence of my activities. Maybe not, but they could still suspect you, Kira says. But you're too well protected. So since I resemble your daughter, they kidnapped me because they knew you wouldn't be able to watch me be tortured. They want you to do this, she says. And then in comes Entek with some armed friends saying, very astute, Major. You couldn't have done any better if you were one of us. So the jig is up. Legate Dad tries to do an emergency beam out, but Entek says, nope, we're suppressing transporters. Ari makes a move toward them and they shoot him, so he was a short-lived character.
Yep, he was a red shirt.
Entek says, you don't know how long I've waited for this day. Imagine in one bold strike, the Order will unmask a traitor and shatter the entire dissident movement. Legate Dad says the movement will survive without me. Entek says, with your help, we'll purge the government of all disloyalty. Yeah, right. The enemies of Cardassia will be destroyed. Legate Dad says, you mean the enemies of the Order. The Obsidian Order is Cardassia, Entek says.
Well, that's a problem right there.
Definitely.
Anytime the security services start thinking that they are the country, then, yeah. Quick observation here. Those Cardassian phaser rifles, they are awesome looking.
I didn't really notice.
Oh, yeah. That would be a really cool prop to make. Like the color on them and the shape and everything. They're great.
Well, they push Legate Dad into a chair and make some threats to Kira about getting her testimony at the trial, which, honestly, I didn't really follow how they were going to have a trial. Then she was going to testify.
Well, they already knew he was guilty. She'd just be confirming the guilt.
Exactly. The whole thing was weird. It doesn't matter because the door opens and in comes Garak and Sisko, phasers drawn. Sisko throws a bag behind Entek, which of course morphs into Odo, who grabs Entek's phaser. Very sneaky.
You were just saying the other week we hadn't seen a lot of Odo shifting.
I know.
They were saving up the FX budget?
Maybe. Kira then grabs the other phasers. Entek recognizes Garak, which I would think would be quite a problem for Garak. He should have gone in disguise. Kira grabs Legate Dad and tells him to come with them. Garak says, Major, I don't think I've ever seen you look so ravishing. It's just a little gross.
Oh, it seemed to fit Garak, I thought.
Yes. Well, Garak says he still has friends on Cardassia, and he tells Entek that he'll enjoy years of enjoyment trying to figure out who they are. Entek is confused. Why is Garak helping this traitor? Garak says treason, like beauty, is in the eye of the beholder. Entek makes a threat that Garak's comfy life in the station is now at risk. And as they're leaving, Entek pulls another phaser from his belt, and Garak shoots and disintegrates him. Pity, Garak says. I rather liked him. And then they run out, but they leave the other two guards alive. They never show them again. It's like they weren't really even in the scene anymore. So Garak's cover is blown.
I assume they were just hired thugs.
Yeah, but the guy did say his name. I don't know.
That's
his
true.
Cover's blown. It's strange. He should have worn a disguise.
I think it's very telling that Entek said they were a traitor and an enemy of the Order. Not to the people, to the Order.
To the Order, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that shows that the Order's followers are a little bit of a problem. for Cardassia as a whole.
Yeah.
Because they see themselves as above everything. Yeah, exactly. Yep. They are.
The rules don't apply to them.
Right.
Or they make the rules.
Because their rules are good for Cardassia.
Wow. Yeah, that's very dangerous. History has shown us how dangerous that is.
Right. And I think on the other side, it shows that Garak is still a patriot, but on different terms. Not even necessarily the same terms as Gamorre, but his vision is different. And that does imply that he sees the Order as traitors.
It's possible that his exile has made him look at things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Like he still feels like he's serving the Empire, but within a defined set of parameters that he's defining.
That's a very good point.
Because it's not the same parameters he would have if he were still part of the Order. He has a whole different vision of things, but I think he still is constantly feeling like he's protecting Cardassia.
Right.
Or maybe the Order. I don't know enough about him yet if he feels that same way.
Well, I think the implication here is that he's protecting the version of Cardassia he wants.
Yeah.
As if the underlying system is correct and is perfect and it just needs some tweaking, like the Order needs to be put out the way. Because remember the book, The Never-Ending Sacrifice?
Yeah.
He thinks that's the greatest work of literature.
Sure, because he feels like his staying on Terrak Nor or Deep Space Nine is a never-ending sacrifice for him.
Oh, that's a really good take.
Otherwise, he would leave. He would go somewhere else. He could easily relocate into the Gamma Quadrant.
Well, now he can. Now he has the ability to actually run away and hide. But the problem if he left the station to go elsewhere is he's pretty much spelled out that they would go after him.
Well, I just think there are ways to hide. I mean, my point is he could go through the wormhole and he's an awful long ways away.
I'm just talking about if you want to stay in the Alpha
Quadrant.
Quadrant.
But he could even do that in the Alpha Quadrant because we've made Cardassians look like humans. So he could make himself look like a human and disappear.
Good point.
But I believe he feels like his exile is part of his never-ending sacrifice.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm saying he's doing it because he feels like that's what he is supposed to do for Cardassia.
Ah, that's a good take. Okay. And the other thing with Garak is I love his gallows sense of humor that we see twice in this scene.
Yeah.
The first time with him saying it will take you years to figure out who the traitor is, who's feeding him information. And then the second time is when he shoots the guy and says, "Pity, I rather liked him."
Pity.
And if you watch the reactions of Kira and Odo, they've never seen this side of him before. And I think it shows a little of the true nature of Garak. He quite literally has no compunction about killing someone who is a potential threat and then makes a quip about it.
Quark has seen it.
Quark has absolutely seen it. But Odo and Kira haven't.
Right.
The way he just does it and then just walks past them to leave.
Yeah, like, let's go.
And if you notice, the two of them like share this look.
Yep.
He does it without hesitation. And bearing in mind, Kira is someone who struggled with this, having done it during the war. And Garak seems to just,
no big deal. No biggie.
Yeah, exactly.
Back on the station, Kira is back to herself and her appropriate haircut. She's walking with the legate, and he says, "So it was all a lie?" According to Dr. Bashir, my genetic structure is entirely Bajoran, Kira says. The guy who claimed to have seen her at Elimspur had disappeared. He was probably a Cardassian agent. Kira wonders why they didn't just bring back the real Ileana, and Legate Dad says, well, the memory drugs would have worked on her, and her memories would have returned, and she would have cooperated. So they knew it would cause him to take action.
Yeah.
He still hopes Ileana is alive, but he doesn't know. She asks if he's sure he doesn't want to stay on the station, but he doesn't think there's a place for him there, which I would agree with.
No.
He says the Mathonite government has granted him political sanctuary. He thinks he'll be safe there. And then he says he has some fatherly advice for her. That Garak fellow, don't trust him. He's a dangerous man, and he'd betray all of your friends and you in an instant if he thought it would help him. Oh. I think we knew that.
Yeah.
I think we've seen that.
Yes.
She says she'll keep an eye on him.
The actor there does a great job. The way his tone and demeanor changes when he talks about Garak.
Yeah.
It was so marked.
It was.
He's being friendly, and then when he gets to something very serious, it totally changes. He becomes much more intense. And I thought that sort of Cardassian bluster came out to an extent. He sort of became so much more formal.
Really? I actually thought he seemed very much giving fatherly wisdom in that moment, like trying to protect someone.
Oh, I didn't mean that he wasn't.
Yeah.
I think he was trying to impress how serious it was.
Yeah.
Okay, he knew what Garak was. And we'd already seen Kira and Odo earlier surprised with the way Garak would just shoot someone when they were a threat. And I saw it as he was trying to express to her that is Garak's normal nature. All of you are disposable.
The funny thing is, Kira is getting examples of Cardassians who are not evil.
Yes. Yeah.
She had Maritza. She wasn't involved a lot in the Prophet and Loss episode, but still, there were some people in that episode, Cardassians, who are not evil. And now she has this guy who is like a father figure and acts like it. That person is telling her, don't trust that Cardassian, even though that Cardassian just came and rescued her.
Right.
So it's got to be very confusing to her. It's like, I'm starting to lighten up on these Cardassians. Maybe they can be okay. And then, oh, wait a minute. He's warning me to not trust that one. I don't know. It must be very confusing.
Oh, yeah.
Well, she says she'll keep an eye on him. And then he says it's time to go. She gives him back the jewelry from the woman who wasn't her mother, but he insists that she keep it. He says, until I find Ileana, you're the closest thing I have to family. And then she says that he's an honorable man, and she thinks his daughter must have loved him very much, which makes him smile. And then he leaves. The end.
Wow. That look on Kira's face, that pretty much sums up how I feel about this ending.
Explain.
It was very emotional.
Yeah.
It was touching and sad. This guy had been through all of that and thought he'd had his daughter returned. And it wasn't. It was just another operation by the very organization he was trying to either discredit or get rid of.
And now his chances of ever seeing his daughter, if she is still alive, are pretty slim.
Yeah.
I liked that he said Kira is his family. I'm sure we never see him again, because that's Star Trek. You just, you're in for one episode and you're never back.
Yeah.
But it actually would be kind of cool if every now and then Kira called him and they had a conversation like, you calling your dad and him asking you if you changed the oil in your car and stuff like that. I think that would be cool, but I'm sure that won't happen.
It's a strange journey for Kira.
Yes.
She's dealing with Cardassians who've been her enemies. And then she's seeing this very vulnerable, emotional side of them.
Yes.
And this guy who would do anything for his daughter. It's almost not what you would expect.
Well, we were talking earlier about how you're supposed to believe that the Cardassians really care about their children.
Yeah.
And it was kind of hard to believe it and understand it, but we've seen it a few times now. So, okay. But now this guy was showing that care and concern for her, and she doesn't look like his daughter anymore. She's back to being Bajoran. But he still was treating her with care and respect, and I'm sure that's just got to be so confusing for Kira. I would be like, oh my God, I don't even know what I'm supposed to think anymore.
Right.
It's just got to be very difficult.
Well, and that turnaround, she said as well, he is an honorable man.
Yes.
That was surprising. And the way she grabbed and held his hand.
Oh, it was very cute. It was good.
It was a very satisfying ending, I thought.
Oh, agreed.
And one final thing. Did you notice the people getting onto the shuttle? The Bajoran guy in the background?
Yeah, who kind of gave him a look. What's with this guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not getting on this shuttle.
He's in the Legate uniform as well.
Yes, with the medals. Kira should have told him, watch out for Shanks.
Oh.
Okay, so that is the end of the episode. We have done a lot of analysis to get to this point, but do you have any other over-analysis?
Why, yes, I do. And I think the first one is, do you think Garak deliberately turned his back on Entek when they were leaving?
Yes.
I can see Garak knowing that he'd have a backup weapon.
Yes.
And was quite deliberately provoking
Absolutely.
him. I would agree. I saw that and thought, wait a minute, you're too much of a pro not to do that.
Because I feel like he could have just stunned him and knocked him out.
Yeah.
He didn't, because he waited for him to go for a weapon. And I think he did it out of self-preservation.
Really?
Yeah.
I took two things from that. Self-preservation. This guy knew Garak had been on the planet and could probably tell his superiors that Garak had maybe broken the agreement to stay on Deep Space Nine. The other way I looked at it, and thinking a little bit more about Garak, was he was sending a message that the Order has limits on the things that they can do that involve him. And he got dragged into this because the Order stepped over that line. And if you like, forced Bajor and forced the Federation's hand to do something. So he was killing Entek to say, yeah, this is where the line is.
That's a very interesting way to look at it. I would not have thought of that. But maybe. I'll take that under advisement.
Okay, the next one.
Yeah.
So do you think they know where the real Ileana is? I mean, by that, the Obsidian Order?
I'm guessing she's not alive, and they know that.
Oh.
In fact, that might have been her, that body.
Oh, gosh. Because Kira looked a little like her, so they could make her into a Cardassian.
Mm-hmm.
So she might have looked enough like Kira that you could make her into a convincing Bajoran.
Yeah, I don't think she's alive.
My take was they'd either lost track of her or she'd been killed.
Right.
I'm hoping, just for Gamore's sake, that she's actually lost and eventually will turn up. That her cover was so good that she's still happily living on Bajor doing something.
Being an artist, hopefully.
Yes, an icon painter.
Anything else?
So, now this is the second time that some guy has given info on Bajorans and suddenly poof is gone.
Yeah. Well, again, this could be a guy who is actually a Cardassian posing as a Bajoran. Because we've proven that can happen.
That's true. That's true.
But also they might have just paid him off and he's on a long vacation now. Who knows?
Oh, he could have been actually a collaborator.
He could have been, yeah.
That's a good take. So a slight follow-on here. So the woman called Elenis Grem at the Central Archive, is she in on this?
No, I don't think so, no. Well, good question.
Because what triggered her to do the research?
Exactly, because they wanted to kick this story into gear. And they could have taken Kira at any point, though, I guess.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's such a good question.
I think you might want to have her under investigation at this point.
Because that pixie was standing there on the second level.
Watching for the phone call.
Well, wow. We don't know.
Maybe someone made a request saying, I lost a relative there. Can you look into it?
Or the pixie could have just been there looking for an opportunity to grab Kira.
Oh, that's true.
But it can't be that because of that guy who disappeared. So the whole thing was definitely a setup. But whether or not the woman in brown was a part of the setup,
right,
I don't know. They may have also already known that that person was doing her research and they could have fed info into the records. I hadn't thought about that. This whole thing is a little bit iffy. I would look into her.
Yeah. I definitely DNA test on her.
Yeah. Gosh.
Another deep cover Cardassian.
Yeah, I never thought about that.
It makes me wonder how many operatives they still have around the place.
That's exactly what was going through my mind. It's like, oh man, we're surrounded by bad people.
Next point. So we've seen multiple times that the Cardassians being helped by these other aliens. Mm-hmm. There was the Teletubbies, there was this woman with the ridge on her forehead, and there was also that other alien in the Cardassians episode. Do you think these are modified Cardassians, or are these actual aliens just helping the Cardassians?
I am starting to think there's a lot of modified Cardassians hanging around ever since Boone.
Yeah, because I would worry that the Cardassians don't trust anyone other than Cardassians.
Yeah.
So would only use modified Cardassians as agents.
I think they're all Cardassians, which is very scary.
Yeah. Okay, that's the conclusion I was coming to as well, yeah.
We need to start doing DNA tests on everyone when they come to the station.
Weekly ones.
Weekly ones, yeah.
And my final piece of overanalysis is, do you think Gamor was correct in his assessment of Garak?
Well, sure.
Really? At this point in the storyline, yes, I would completely agree. In fact, actually, I think even knowing all the way to the end of the storyline, I think I would agree. I think the character of Garak has this vision of what Cardassia should be.
Yes.
His vision is very much an idealized Cardassia.
Mm-hmm.
The Cardassia from the novels that he obviously likes, which is different from Gamor's view, is different from the Obsidian Order's view, and probably isn't even necessarily a realistic view of Cardassia. It's truly an idealized view of what it should be and how it should work.
Well, it's hard to say whether or not Legate Dad knows any of that. But what he does know is that Garak was a member of the Obsidian Order, and he does not trust the Obsidian Order. So it actually could have also just been that simple.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't think of that.
But I think it's just good advice that they ought to keep their eyes on Garak.
Yeah.
He's not looking out for them. Yeah, they managed to blackmail him into helping in this situation.
Yeah.
And there have been other situations where he's helped when it has been to be against Dukat.
Yeah.
But in general, I don't know that that's wise to bring him into too many things. Although I hope they do, because I quite like his character. He's fun to watch. But I would not, I would definitely not trust him.
Okay, I like your take on that.
Although we've only really seen him shoot Cardassians so far.
Well, it's not like they didn't deserve it.
Although also remember, Kira had some interactions with him in the Mirror Universe, and I do not think she enjoyed those.
No.
So that would also weigh on your mind. You can't just ignore that, like that never happened. or, convince your brain that was somebody else. It's not that easy. That's still going to be there.
Well, I think she saw more of the pure Garak, of what Garak would be like.
That's exactly why I think that would impact her.
And I guess she saw some of that here when Garak just executed Entek right in front of her.
Right.
Maybe it made her realize that, okay, these two aren't that different.
Yeah, which was my point in that episode.
I'm in agreement with you there, yes.
Any other overanalysis?
No, that wraps it up for me. We did a lot of analysis in this episode as it went along.
We did.
There was a lot to talk about.
Well, if we move to women in the future, we don't see a lot of female Cardassians, but it's nice to know they have female agents. And also, somehow, all these Cardassians have mothers, but we've not seen anybody's mother. We've seen a lot of dads. We've seen no moms. Gosh, it's almost like a Disney movie. Kira did seem on the verge of breaking awfully quickly. I was a little disappointed in that. She was in tears quickly. We're in season 3 now, and I felt like she still wasn't really able to think strategically and adapt to the situation.
Yeah.
It almost didn't matter if what they were saying was true. She still could have adapted to make that situation work for her. She's always kind of this blunt instrument when left to her own devices, and I find that frustrating because I feel like she should be learning a little bit at this point, getting smarter, and we're not really seeing that. I'm not sure if this is a choice for this character or what.
But she's only had a relatively short period of time to learn new techniques. Yeah. She's been the blunt instrument since her childhood. I don't think you go away from that quickly.
It's been years, though, at this point.
Well, 2 and a bit, I think.
Yeah.
That's awfully quick, though. I mean, if you've been doing this since you were a kid.
I guess I don't because I believe in the power of positive leadership so much.
Yeah.
She should be able to see some of the positives from Starfleet at this point and be adapting more to them to get more out of it.
Yeah.
Of course, at the same time, we don't see as much positive Starfleet stuff on this station as we would if she were on a starship.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a good point.
We see a lot more real-world leadership.
Well, I don't know if it's real-world leadership, but it's different.
Frontier leadership.
Frontier leadership. Okay, I'll accept that. But yeah, I did think if you consider how we're saying that she's still a blunt instrument even after 2 or 3 years, then it really doesn't make much sense that she would be in tears 20 minutes into this or a couple of days into this.
Oh, great point.
I didn't buy the tears.
Yeah.
I did like the little thing about her not liking holosuites and preferring reality. That was a nice touch for a character who's very no-nonsense in general.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was good. I think that is all that I have about women in the future. No sexual harassment to report, so it's good. Okay, let's go to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
Another absolute thumbs up. Loved this episode. Great story, fantastic acting, really good props, really good makeup, and a very satisfying ending. Also very touching.
I agree. Thumbs up. Very good episode. Really liked the ending. There were a couple of scenes that I really liked. Some really good guest stars, as we do pretty much in every episode on this show. A few things I thought maybe were weaknesses that could have been a bit stronger, but overall, thumbs up.
And I think a final shout out to I was blown away by the makeup. Just beautifully
Yeah, the makeup
done.
Was tremendous. I think every episode so far this season has been thumbs up from both of us. Has it not?
It has been crazy.
It's like 5 in a row, and we ended the season with a handful of thumbs up in a row as well.
Yeah.
I'm very happy to see us going in this direction. Maybe it's true what people told me, that from season 3, it gets better and better.
Yes.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of season 3, episode 5. Tune in next week for episode 6. In the meantime, if you'd like to tell us your own overanalysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, please email us at rebingeit@gmail.com or tweet us at rebingeit. Also check us out on talkthroughmedia.com. You can leave feedback for us there, and you can also listen to all of the other awesome podcasts on our network.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.